Take it, Al.
Good evening, everybody. This is Alan Blumkin on the Comfortably Zone Radio Network, and I'm here tonight with my cohort on the Pittsburgh Sports series, David Finoli, and tonight we're going to talk about the 1971 World Series, another World Series where the Pirates won in the seventh game. It was an interesting series, and a lot of unusual things happened during it. David, welcome.
Thank you, Al. How are you doing tonight?
Okay, how are you?
I'm pretty good. This was quite a World Series, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. As I was telling Ralph, I was at the four games in Baltimore.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I remember you telling me that. That must have been quite a thrill to be at that last one.
Yeah, I had to do all sorts of crazy things to get down there, but when you're in your 20s, you do things like that.
Absolutely. Well, this is actually out of the 14 titles I've been blessed to be able to witness in Pittsburgh. This was my first. 10 years old at the time, but certainly a huge baseball Pirate fan by that point. And I'll tell you what, it was an incredible offense that they were developing with this squad. Willie Stargell, now that he had been pulled from the shackles of Forbes Field, which you had seen some games there, and I assume he hit some many towering flies that ended up being home runs at Three Rivers.
Yeah. I mean, even Bill Mazeroski his power numbers were hurt by playing on Forbes Field because out of his 138 career home runs in the regular season, only one-third were at Forbes Field, 46. It broke down exactly 46 were at Forbes Field and 92 were on the road.
Wow. That speaks volumes. And I remember Stargell's ex-wife once claiming that had Stargell played in Three River Stadium for his whole career, she thinks he would have hit 600 homers.
Yeah. Forbes Field was a hitter's paradise if you were a doubles and triples hitter.
Exactly.
And the Pirates, when they played there, had quite a few batting champions over the years.
Yes, they did. Absolutely. But Stargell came out of the shackles this year, 48 homers, 125 runs batted in. Bobby Robertson really was taking over at first base. I remember back then he was being compared to a young Mickey Mantle, which due to his back problems he came nowhere close to being. But in this season he hit 26 homers at 24 years old and had a very memorable few games in the playoffs. You had the grave digger, Richie Hebner, at third base, 17 homers. Manny Sanguillen, who at that time was the only catcher in the game that was considered near the level of Johnny Bench. Great arm, fast runner, great hitter, 319 that year. And, of course, the greatest, I'm going to say the greatest non-steroid player at 36 years old that I had seen. Roberto Clemente hit 341 that year.
Now, let's not forget Al Oliver.
Oh, absolutely. Al Oliver at 282 and certainly hit one of the top 5 home runs in Pittsburgh history in Game 4 of the NLCS.
Yeah, the NLCS, they played the Giants, and everybody was looking forward to it because they had been beaten in 3 straight by Cincinnati the year before. And aside from one game, they had one game where I think it was Game 3 where Bob Robertson hit 3 home runs, and they beat the Giants in 4 games to advance to the World Series.
Absolutely. And coming into that game, they did not play well. Actually, they had played worse against San Francisco than any team in the league. They were 3-9 during the season, and after losing the first game 5-4, you certainly had to wonder if this team was snake bit. But I mean, it was a memorable team, and there was one game during the season that certainly encompassed. Bruce Markinson wrote a wonderful book about about this team, and just some of the racial barriers they broke down. On September 1st, after playing a miserable August where their lead dropped from 11 to 4 games, something happened that had never happened in the history of the game at that point, as 9 men of color took the field for the first time ever in the history of the game. And Danny Murtaugh basically said he wasn't aware he had done it at the time, whether it was or not, I guess is conjecture, but he said, I only see Pirates, I don't see color. And it was a historic game that the Pirates won 10-7. Certainly, I remember looking it up the next day, and there was no mention of it. So it certainly was something that slipped by the writers at the time, too.
Yeah, Murtaugh came back. He roughed after 1964 and came back for a short while at the end of 1967 to finish out that season. And then they had Larry Shepard as the manager for 68 and 69. And then they brought Murtaugh back in 1970. And 1971, he, from what I've read and what Dick Grote told me when I spoke to him in 1985, he said if you couldn't play for Danny Murtaugh, you couldn't play for anyone.
Which is basically, talking to some of the 71 guys, they certainly would echo those thoughts perfectly. They seem to all love him, and he maybe didn't have the most talented pitching staff at his disposal, but he certainly handled them great, with Glass and Ellis leading the way. Dave Justy was a 30-year-old starter with Houston and the Cardinals, and came in and Murtaugh put him in a closer's role, an early form of a closer's role, where you'd pitch 2 or 3 innings at times to close out a game, and ended up being a star of the Fireman of the Year, 30 saves, and just certainly a pivotal part of it.
I still haven't forgiven him for 1972.
I'm with you. That was certainly the home run to Johnny.
Yeah, bench. And then first and third. You get wild runners the first and third, and then they pulled them, and Moose got 2 outs, and then Wild pitched the run in. And but that's for another time.
Absolutely.
The series opened in Baltimore, and on Saturday, and the first game, Pirates got 3 runs in the top of the second. Doc Ellis was pitching against, I believe it was Dave McNally.
Yeah.
And then he gave up a run in the bottom of the second, and then he gave up a 3-run home run in the bottom of the third to Merv Rettenman.
Right.
And they wound up losing that game 5-3.
Right, and it was a freaky. The Pirate bats, while they took a 3-0 lead, didn't
do anything after that.
Didn't exactly wake up on fire, because they had one hit in the inning, Cash's single against McNally, but basically they had a walk, a couple of on-fielders choices, and Cash's single. So by there were 2 errors in the inning also.
Yeah, McNally was untouchable for the rest of that game.
Absolutely. And then what happened after game 2? I can't imagine how you were there.
What happened is funny. It's a funny story. Game 2 was supposed to be Sunday. It was rained out, so I was with a bunch of people, and me and this other guy decided we were going to stay over. Mm-hmm. So at about 9:05 the following morning, I called my office up and said I wasn't going to be in that day. And my boss asked me why. I said, because I'm in Baltimore. And it's funny, when I got back, I went home after that second game, and I went into work the next day, he said to me, we all knew where you were, and if you would have told me anything else, I would have had your, I would have had your backside up on a tree for that. They all knew, yeah.
Well, and, I'm glad your honesty paid off.
Yeah, and frankly, that second game wasn't worth staying down there for.
Oh my God, no!
They lost out 11-3. They started Bob Johnson, who they had picked up from Kansas City, and he was clobbered. And then they brought in Bob Moose in that game, and they really got out of hand. I mean, they lost the game 11-3. It was a game that they were never in.
Yeah, and then the one thing I always remember about that game is just the hopelessness of Willie Stargell trying to climb the fence to catch a ball that whacked off it, and I mean it was. I just remember thinking that I wonder if they're gonna even win one, and I remember some of the press out there basically was hoping the Pirates would concede after 3 games because it looked like such a mismatch.
Yeah, after 2 games. It was sort of like after the 3rd game in 1960.
Exactly.
They were clobbering those 2 games, and I came back and I said, "Oh, they're not going to do anything." I have a close friend of mine, a guy I'm still very friendly with, who was rooting for the Orioles. And he said, "This series is over." I said, Yogi hadn't come out with the quote yet. So I said, we'll see. So they came back to the 3rd game in Pittsburgh, and they used blasts. And I believe Bob Robertson had a 3-run home run in that game, and they beat Cuellar.
Right, and Glass, as you recall, was not having. No,
he didn't have a super year.
A good playoff at all. I mean, he had a pretty good year, but he got hammered by the Giants in both games 1 and 4. So there was a lot of confidence coming in with this guy, and he seemed to find his edge. 3 hitters that day, struck out 8. And you're right. This was the day of the famous Bob Robertson bunt bunt call.
Yeah, yeah. You're right. I forgot about that. But the bunt, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were, I mean, the situation was Danny Murtaugh called for Bob Robertson to bunt. And Bob Robertson, of course, being a hulking slugger, he had Clemente and Stargell were on first and second with nobody out, and Murtaugh called for him to bunt him over. Robertson missed the bunt and put the ball over center right field. When Billy, my friend Billy Rainier and I, we were at the 40th anniversary dinner for the 71 champions, and we were talking to Robertson at the bar, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to tell you guys a story. You guys remember that game in Game 3? I said, "Yeah." He said, everybody thinks I just missed that call. Let me tell you, I looked at him when he made that call, and I kept thinking to myself, that damn Irishman, he knows I've never done it in my life. So I ignored the shot, and thank God I hit the homer, and I would have been in a lot of trouble.
Huh. There was a story I read years ago when Joe McCarthy took over the Red Sox in 1948. Some writer asked him, "Can Ted Williams bunt?" And McCarthy said, "I'll never find out."
Well, and that was the thing. I mean, they were clinging to a 2-1 lead at the time.
I know, yeah, but the thing is, you can't ask players to bunt who never have. It's
without a doubt, that could have been a disaster. I mean, the game's so close, that really could have been a disaster. And I mean, you silenced the Baltimore bats. They had 16 runs in the first 2 games. And again, I always consider, I don't know what you think, but at least in my lifetime, which encompasses 61 on, this Baltimore team in between 69 and 71, I always considered the greatest I've seen, especially the 71 team that just dominated the American League. And after those first 2 games, I mean, the Seed Blasters completely whole.
I saw the first three games of the two down there and one here of the 1969 series against the Mets, and they beat Tom Seaver in game one of in '69, and Kuzma almost no hit them in the second game of that series, and A.G. made the catches, and the fact that they would wind up losing that series to the Mets was just just almost unconscionable.
No,
Go ahead. The only team I can really relate to that with was the Canseco McGuire A's in 1988 through 1890. They won three pennants fairly easily, and they only won the one series, the Earthquake Series. They lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good comparison. But because I mean, those certainly two of those losses came to huge underdogs in the Dodgers and Reds.
And Game 4, stood out tremendously because this was the first night game in World Series history.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it's set a very bad precedent where they're all night games now.
Exactly. But it certainly didn't get off to a good start. And I always kind of thought Luke Walker took a little too much bashing, because if you look at how that game started to develop, I mean, Blair hit a flare out to center, then two infield singles, a pass ball, an intentional walk, and two fly balls, and Walker gives up 3 runs, and he's pretty much out of the game at that point.
They pulled him out.
He didn't get hit hard.
They pulled him with 2 outs in the first inning. They brought in Bruce Keeson, who was I believe something like 20 years old at the time, 21 years old.
21 years old, and had what you got to consider one of the great relief performances in World Series history.
He pitched 6 1/3 innings and gave them nothing.
Intimidated them, I believe.
Yeah.
Hit, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sure you remember the Clemente non-home run.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he thought the Pirates came back with fumbles from Stargell and Oliver in the bottom of the first to tie or to come within a run. And you're right, in the third inning, Clemente hits one off the wall, where the foul pole ran up the wall. And the umpire called it a foul, which caused quite a rebound, didn't it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was sitting there and watching this on TV. I got a little upset over that call. I mean, I couldn't believe it, but they came back, and I think it was Milton May that wound up driving in the winning run.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Oliver tied it up after that in the fourth, and you're right. It was back and forth into the bottom of the seventh, and Bill Bay was a rookie at that point in time too. And
they beat Pat Dobson, who was the fourth of the Oriole 20-game winners. They had 4 20-game winners that year with McNally, Palmer, Cuellar, and Dobson.
Absolutely.
And only the second team ever to do that. The first team was the 1920 White Sox, and 2 of them were Eddie C. Cott and Claude Williams, who were expelled because of the Black Sox scandal after that season.
Well, I mean, this was to do this under modern times, even though it quite hadn't turned over to the bullpen wild game that we see today. I mean, that was still just such an impressive feat.
Now that'll never happen again.
No.
Can't get 1 20-game winner anyway now.
I was going to say, if you have 4 20-game winners in baseball, you're lucky. I mean, it's a rare feat. But, certainly that the 2 rookies, I wouldn't say they were both 21-year-old in Milt May and Keeson, lead the way there. The series is now tied. And you have Nelson Browse on the mound. He had some experience in the World Series.
Funny story. After that game ended, my friend from I called up my friend from Ohio who was rooting for the Orioles, and he said tomorrow is going to be the biggest mismatch in the history of the World Series. It's Noli Bryles against McNally.
It's McNally, yeah.
So after that game ended, I called him up and said, "You were right. It was."
It was an extremely mismatch. I mean, Browse, I mean, my one memory of that was some of those pitches he would literally throw at such an angle and so hard that he would flop belly first into the mound.
Yeah.
And I mean, you got to consider after what arguably was the best relief spin in World Series history. Nellie Browse, I mean, not many people have thrown two hitters or less in a World Series.
No, that was probably the best game he pitched in his entire career.
Oh, absolutely.
That they had gotten him and Vic Davalillo for the Cardinals for Matty Alou before the season, and I know there were a number of people who thought that they gave Matty Alou away for nothing, but Davalillo helped quite a bit as as an outfield reserve, and Briles came through. He beat, I believe he beat McNally in that game.
Yeah, he beat McNally, and actually, after Robertson hit another homer in the bottom of the second, Briles actually knocks in the second run of the game with a single that inning, so he helps himself out there too. And I mean, all of a sudden, this Baltimore team, which was once so dominant, had been reduced to 4 runs in 3 games. With the suddenly impressive power pitching. And to this point, they had pitched 5 different pitchers in 5 different games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because basically the staff was, the starting staff especially, was really patchwork.
Yeah, it was, and Ellis was hurt.
Yeah, and they started a couple of these pitchers because they had to start somebody, but after Game 5, nobody was saying that anymore that this was going to be a walkover. I mean, the 5 series that the Pirates won in their history, all have been 7 games.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're 5-0 in the 7th game of the World Series.
And
the deciding game of the World Series, I should say, yeah.
In the 5 they won, I would certainly say this would be the one that they were the biggest underdog.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so after Game 5, a few friends of mine, the ones that we were from all over, said, "You're coming in for Game 6 and 7?" 6, and I said, "Yeah, I'm coming down." I didn't have a car at the time, so I wound up leaving my apartment at 3:30 in the morning to go down to the Port Authority and catch a bus at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow.
To get down, I did crazy things in those years, to get down to the ballpark in time. And when I got there, the people I was meeting, they had bought all the tickets. So, we were sitting in the left field upper deck there, and there was no cover in Memorial Stadium, and the tickets were like $10 a piece.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a steal, not compared to what they are now. It was steal, and Baltimore was having trouble selling it out.
Oh yeah, I mean that would have had to. I mean they had the series in their pocket going to Pittsburgh. That had to be just a devastating feeling in Baltimore. And after Robertson singles home run and Clemente homers, they're down 2-0 in Game 6, and you had to figure at this point in time that the series was just about over. Yeah,
I think they started Bob Johnson again in that game.
Bob Moose started.
Bob Moose, you're right. Excuse me, you're right, yeah. And they brought in, then they bring in Johnson, and they brought in Miller.
They brought in Johnson and Dave Justy, who gave up the tying single.
The run that tied the game up at 2, and then I said, "Oh my God!" And then the 10th inning, Frank Robinson walked, the next guy singled, and then Brooks Robinson hit a fly ball, and Frank Robinson scored the winning run on that. And I said, "Oh my God, I just have to come back here tomorrow." Yeah,
I'll never forget him sliding under St. Guillen's leg. So from if I'm not mistaken, Davalillo was in center, who did not exactly have the greatest arm in the world. Still almost caught Robinson at home, but give credit to Baltimore at that point, because you're 2 1/3 innings away from or 7 outs away from being done, and you fight your way back to win that game and force a seventh game.
Yeah, basically, I went into the stadium for Game 7. It was very overcast. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "I can't afford another rainout."
Yeah,
I have to stay over and call them up and work up again. Say I'm still down here, and so I was not only sweating the Pirates in that game, but sweating the fact that hopefully there wouldn't be any rain.
right. Absolutely.
And it was Cuellar against Blas, and Clemente hit a home run in the fourth inning,
right,
to make it 1-0.
And I mean, I'm sure you were calling the first. The Earl Weaver maneuver to try to get Blas off.
Well, oh yeah, obviously, yeah.
I mean, Blas comes into this game. I've seen the interview with him before the game tons of times. He looked nervous as hell. He looked like, he just had no confidence in the world just hearing him talk. And he walks Buford to start the game. Then Boot Powell, after Johnson pops up on a bunt, Boot Powell hits several just loud fly ball or foul balls. And Earl Weaver comes out of the dugout and claims Rule 804 that Blas wasn't touching the rubber properly, and comes out to continually try and argue and thinking, I'm sure, in Weaver's mind that he's just completely taken Blas out of the game, and Blas is just mentally shot at that point after all he's doing. But when I interviewed Blas basically said he was nervous, and after Weaver came down, that actually calmed him down. So he said every time he saw Weaver after that, he would always thank him, because had Weaver not done that, Blas might have just imploded at that point.
Yeah, somebody in one of the baseball Facebook sites I'm on yesterday put a picture of Weaver, and they said, "What are your memories of Earl Weaver?" So I put down, I said it could fill a book.
I'm sure. He was a great manager, though. But
yeah, another one who
right.
He was a Cardinal farmhand, and he actually made it up to AAA, but he never could never have that bat in the big leagues.
Oh wow! But he made his Hall of Fame mark as a manager.
Oh yeah. And I agree with him on sacrifice bunts. He said they're giving away an out, and it's turned out to be fairly true. But in the top of the eighth of that game, Willie Stargell singled, and Jose Pagan, who was playing third base in place of Hebner, because they were facing Cuellar, who was left-handed, wound up hitting a double, and Stargell, who was not exactly a speed demon, mowed it all the way around from first base and scored.
Into home, but he was lucky because there was about I still think he would have scored, but there was at least a chance they get him at home plate. But Boot Powell inexplicably
cut the ball
off the ball.
Yeah.
But Pagan, as you recall, he was a controversial guy on the roster in the postseason. Rennie Stennett, who hit 353.
Yeah.
Was seemingly the odds-on choice to take that spot, and Murtaugh decided to go with the experience of Pagan, which was very controversial at the time. But again, Murtaugh makes the right decision at this point, because Pagan has one of the clutch hits in Pirate history.
Yeah, Pagan did play shortstop for the Giants during the 1962 World Series.
Right.
And so he had some World Series experience. Yeah, the Pirates acquired him for, I believe, straight up for Dick Schofield.
Yes.
Well, they found out couldn't play shortstop regularly after they traded Groth.
That's right.
But
they did.
Yeah, so they played Pagan at third, and Pagan delivered the hit, and then Blas wound up surrendering a run in the bottom of the eighth to make it 2-1. And then the Pirates went out in the ninth, and Blas came out to pitch the ninth, and he got two ground balls and pop up. The last batter was Merv Rettenman.
Well, Rettenman.
Yeah, who got the 3-run home run in the first game. And he got a ground ball to Jackie Hernandez, who was playing shortstop. Another name that not too many people remember.
No, he came from Kansas City. He was part of the Freddie Patek deal.
Yeah.
And Rettenman, as you recall, I mean, he hit it up the middle, but Hernandez made a hell of a play to get it and toss it on to Robertson. Hernandez forgettable until that point. He hit only 206, if I'm not mistaken, for the year. But I mean, he makes a heck of a play, and certainly then the joyous picture of Blast jumping into Robertson's arms. And
I was one of the very few people at ballpark who was happy.
Well, that's wonderful. That's a wonderful experience. You got to see in what in my eyes are two of the greatest 3 games in franchise history in the 1960 game and the 71 game 7.
Well, 1960, I always saw the 9th inning live.
That's all you needed to see.
No, I tell you, we ran, me and this friend of mine who I'm still in touch with, we were 17. Freshman at Pitt, we ran over down the dorm stairs after Smith hit the home run. We ran over to the ballpark and snuck into the bleachers. We didn't know from nothing.
Sure.
I had transistor the radio to follow the game, and as I said, you're that age, you do things. You look back on years later, and you're amazed you even attempted it, let alone did it.
Absolutely. And,
but that was a good season. I also thought the 72 team was better than the 71 team.
Yeah.
During the regular season, and that was such a devastation that 5th game because they brought in Ramon Hernandez in the 8th inning, blasted, pitched the first 7 innings at the final game, and Hernandez retired the Reds in order. So then they bring in Justy, and I said, why don't they leave him in there? Guy, in those days nobody knew about setup man and all that business that they have now.
Yeah, no, it was. The team was definitely better. The team that was the first strike year.
Yeah,
and it cost the Pirates. They would have won 100 games.
And nine players got 100 hits or more for that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a better team than 71, and certainly in my eyes was a better team than 60. Talent-wise and just performance during the regular season, it was the best team since 25, and certainly the best team since. I don't think any of the 90s teams would have approached the talent level of the 72 Pirates, and I mean that's something we can certainly debate, 72 versus 92. CS, which was in my eyes was certainly 92 was a little more devastating than 72 for me, but I always thought that was because I was an adult in 92 and just saw that there was no future for this team after the year.
Well, 92 basically, was quite a bit older when that happened, and that only devastated me for a day. I knew that was it because, Bonds was in his walk year, and so was Drabeck.
Oh, yeah.
I knew they weren't going to pay anybody, during that period of time. So,
25 years later, I still get cold sweats over that game.
They had survived losing Smiley and Bonilla after 91.
Right. 91 was the best of those 3 teams.
Yeah. They couldn't win one game at home last weekend to beat the Braves in the LCS that year.
Yeah.
But 71 was a great year. Danny Murtaugh, unfortunately, had to retire again after that season.
Right. And would come back after.
Would come back when everything fell apart.
73.
73.
Yeah. In 73.
He might be getting killed and Blast totally losing his effectiveness.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean that and St. Ian had a couple decent years, but that also was pretty much the end of his superstardom
I was at the game in Shea Stadium where a Met outfielder named Dave Augustine played one of the Pirates had hit the ball off the maybe it was Zisk or somebody hit the ball off the wall, off the fence in left field.
It was actually Augustine for the Pirates.
By Augustine for the Pirates, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah. Who did it?
And Richard Ziskel was not exactly a speed demon either. Was thrown out at home plate.
Yeah.
With the winning run, and that essentially, knocked them out of this 1973. But so, it would take a while because the Dodgers in '74 and the Reds in '75 were really better teams than the Pirates were, and Pirates, wound up getting into the LCS and losing both years to them.
Well, 4 years after that, they would have a memorable season, which we're gonna discuss next week with the co-author of the book on the '79 champions. Bill Rainier will be joining us.
Fine.
And we'll I don't know if you got to see any games that year. Were you able to come out for?
No, I wasn't. I was in a work crisis, and I couldn't get away from. I didn't have any vacation time left, and I couldn't get away for that. But I watched everything on TV, and I assume that, I guess we'll discuss this next week after the Tovey meltdown in Game 4. I was ready to write that off. Which was my first World Series game, unfortunately. Was that one? But we'll talk that, and we'll have I'll talk about the stories that Jim Rooker told about that series that turned it around, and we can certainly talk a little about that next week. Which certainly some surprising stories that he told that didn't make the Pirate scouting department who was scouting the Orioles look very good, but. Okay, Dave. By the way, when is your 50 the Champions book coming out? Well, the Champions book will be out on October 30th. And I got the Penguin book out there that just came out about a couple weeks ago on the top 50 games called Classic 10. So I saw the posting on that. Yeah. So we'll have those, and hopefully in 2 weeks, perhaps we can talk about that as it comes out. We can talk about that top 50 teams book, and certainly go through Pittsburgh history with that. Okay, fine. David, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, Al, as always. As always, from my end also, and I hope everybody who listens to this enjoys it, gains something from both our perspectives, and we'll see everybody next week. You got it. Take care, David. Take care, bud. Bye-bye. Bye.